I'm Talia Martinez, and this is Transportation and Placarding Regulations. Our learning objectives are understanding the types of transportation for hazardous waste, understanding the shipping and containment requirements for hazardous waste, and understanding placarding requirements for transporters of hazardous waste. When shipping hazardous materials, there are a lot of considerations to take. Most of these considerations are regulations, which means that they're required. Such include requirements from the Department of Transportation, which is otherwise referenced as DOT requirements. Though the DOT regulates the transportation of hazardous wastes, you'll find the requirements set forth by the DOT discussed. Requirements specifically regarding shipping methods or ways that hazardous waste can and cannot be transported or shipped. We will discuss packaging methods and containment methods. For shipping and containment methods, we will look specifically at the Code of Federal Regulations for each, packaging and shipping. The final topic that we will discuss is placarding. When we talk about placarding, we discuss the purpose of a placard and the information that can be gathered from a placard. We will discuss the topics. There will be information that has been provided from the DOT, the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, and from class lectures. This article is a description and overview of EPA and Kentucky transportation regulations regarding hazardous waste. Transportation of hazardous waste. Transporting hazardous waste is very tedious and requires detailed documentation. The term that we use for persons that transport hazardous waste and materials from point A to point B is a transporter. Transporters are crucial in the process of disposing of or recycling a hazardous waste. Therefore, transporters must know a variety of information. Information such as knowing the responsibilities and how to safely transport the waste, and being aware of hazards that are associated with the waste that they're transporting. Some of the transporter's responsibilities include ensuring that the vehicle is marked with the appropriate placard, blocking and bracing, loading and unloading, compatibility of the vehicle, and reporting any incidents or spills that may occur. According to the transportation lecture from Module 2, all transporters are required to have an EPA identification number before they can legally transport any type of hazardous waste, of which would require a manifest. This is to ensure that the waste is not only identified and can be tracked, but also to ensure that the environment is safe and will not be contaminated by a release. There is a variety of ways that hazardous waste can be transported, but with each method of transportation comes the variances and regulations for each type of transportation. The two lesser-known methods are by air or airplanes and vessels or watercrafts. One of the more known methods that transporters use is by truck or vehicle. When transporting by truck, the containment makeup, such as a tanker truck, must be compatible with the hazardous waste that is being hauled. For instance, if the truck is hauling a corrosive hazardous waste, then the makeup of the tanker must be resistant to the hazardous waste's corrosivity properties. The second most common form of transportation is railroads, or tank cars. Regulations for using a tank car as a means of transportation seem to be endless. When utilizing a tank car, there are many considerations that need to be made, such as the thickness of plates, closures for openings, safety relief valves and tests of the safety relief valves, individual specification requirements applicable to pressure tank cars, tanks, special commodity requirements for pressure tank car tanks, and venting and loading and unloading, measuring and sampling devices. All of the requirements that were just stated and more can be found in 49 CFR 179 tank cars. Shipping and containment of hazardous waste. Packaging for hazardous waste can come in different forms. In this section, we'll discuss the packaging and containment methods that should be used during the shipment of hazardous waste, as well as the responsibilities of shippers. Some responsibilities of the shipper include determining whether the material meets the requirements to be deemed a hazardous material, class or identification number, warning labels and markings, the packaging, placarding and shipping information, and emergency response information, which can all be found in the article How to Comply with Federal Hazardous Materials Regulations. There are many requirements that must be followed regarding packaging of hazardous materials. All packaging must be marked in an unobstructed area with specifications, the identifying information for the entity that certifies compliance with the UN standard, and the markings must be readily apparent and legible. If the package is within a certain size range, then the identifying information has to be on the package in at least the top or on the side in addition to the first marking. When it comes to shippers, there are regulations as well. For instance, the shipper is responsible for ensuring that the hazardous material is being packaged accordingly, with special regard to Part 173 of 49 CFR. Some things that are included in the regulations are the quantities that are accepted, agricultural operations, highway and rail quantities, and the classification of a material having more than one hazard. Placarding for transporters of hazardous waste. Most of what we have discussed revolves around information and ensuring that packages and containers are marked, and more so that hazards are communicated. Our third and final topic is placards. Placards are diagrams that use the Global Harmonized System, or GHS, to ensure that hazards are communicated efficiently in a universal communicator. In short, placards are the transporter's way of communicating hazardous materials. Some rules for placards that can be found in the transportation lecture include that they must be diamond-shaped with at least a 10-inch by 10-inch on each side. They must be visible from the direction that it faces. They must be placed visibly on all four sides of the vehicle and securely attached, and maintained so that the color of the placard is not faded, damaged, or reduced by debris or dirt. What information goes on a placard? The information that goes on a placard can include the properties of the material, such as is it toxic, corrosive, or flammable, the quantity of the material, the health hazard of the material, and the stability of the material. Sometimes placards are just pictures. Placards provide first responders with information that they would need to appropriately respond to a release. Here are some visual aids that help us better understand what goes onto a placard. The non-flammable pretty much is just a picture and tells you that there's non-flammable cylinders on the transporter's vehicle. The NFPA diamond shows us the health hazards, the specific hazards, the fire hazards, and the stability of the material.